Hey everyone, welcome to the 461st episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patrons Devin Ferguson, our buddy from Canada, who we will not charge 25% more to be part of our Patreon, and a sneaky guy named Mike Slane. Thank you for being patrons. I'm Oren Kaplan.
And I'm Menin. Today we've got Andrew Kightlinger and Idan Menin on the show to talk about their new film, Lost on a Mountain in Maine. It's available streaming, on the places where you buy movies, your iTunes, your Primes, all of those places. So you can check it out now. And it was also in movie theaters on like 650 screens, something crazy. 750, even more. Look at that.
It's a fun adventure survival film. It is family friendly, I would say. My daughter came in. I was watching it today. I was watching the screener and my daughter came in and she was like, what's going to happen to that kid? Why is he so dirty? Like, it's about this kid that gets lost. Yeah. And in this conversation, I found out the kid that played the kid was actually a kid, 12 years old.
12 years old.
That's crazy. Actually, like that, there's like a hole in my directing experience, which is working with kids between the ages of like 10 and 16. I just have had very few.
16, if you're going to cast a 16-year-old, you're going to cast an 18-year-old. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing.
I can work legally for as much as anyone else can work.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's that. 12 is kind of a, like, you haven't done any like tween sort of stories, basically.
Yeah. Even when I worked on tween stuff, we did cast like 18-year-olds to play.
Well, sure. It's aspirational.
Because tweens, exactly. If you're making stuff for a 12-year-old, you have like a 16-year-old character that's played by an 18-year-old.
Right.
Yeah. So 12-year-olds would be aspirational for like 10 or 8-year-olds, which my daughter, she's really into these book series by this author named Raina Telgemeier, these graphic novels. And and also the Babysitters Club, Raina Telgemeier did some artwork for them. And I think they're all like kind of junior high, middle school kids. And my daughter's in 3rd grade. So it kind of tracks. Yeah. We've both worked with Idan before. He's actually potentially like one of the first cinematographers I met when I moved to LA many years ago, almost 20 years ago. So, he's been around.
That he shot for me, that first thing he shot for me, it was like the first or second sketch I ever did for College Humor. So we go way back. It's pretty cool. Idan's one of those DPs that has such a presence. Do you know what I mean? He's always so calm. He's always so mellow, but he's coming from a place of understanding, thoughtfulness, and authority. This is a great conversation for sure. And fun to know one half of a duo so well. And to see them together, I think, was kind of a treat.
Yeah. And honestly, it's kind of hard to have director DP combos on the podcast because I think all of our questions, like 90% of what we want to talk about is kind of the directing.
We're a little directional. It'll be like, okay, we're going to talk to this person for a bunch of time, and then we pivot. So it's like, okay, directing, PD, TP. It's hard for them not to feel left out at any given point in the conversation.
Right. But because we know him specifically, I feel like it's more balanced than our usual director DP conversation. And I don't know if he did this when you worked with him, but he's like one of those DPs that dresses really nice to set. Like he wears like a cummerbund sometimes, or like nice shoes, or
nice hat.
Nice hat. Yeah, which is kind of funny. I was thinking today about, I was listening to the Lonely Island podcast, and they had this guy, Mike O'Brien, on the podcast last week, and he was a writer on SNL.
And a cast member for a minute.
And I guess his name was Pat O'Brien. He went by Pat O'Brien when he lived in Chicago. And then when he moved to New York, he was like, I'm going to go by Mike O'Brien now. And he kind of just changed his name. And it made me think about, what if I moved? Could I change my director name? You know how some people have like director names, like Director X, or...
I like it when people have... or like Shinola. Do you remember those guys? They were like a director collective.
Yeah, Megaforce. I mean, there's a lot of these like groups that have...
The Dads. I love that one.
Yeah.
That's so good.
But there are also individual directors that are just like, Mr. Matt Enlow.
It's an exercise in branding, which is kind of something we're kind of good at. And also, it's like Matt Enlow is like a pretty generic name,
Yeah, like Tarsum, it's the one name director. But I was thinking, what if I went just by OKAP, and that was like my director name, and then people would remember it, like, I was directed by OCAP, and then people would be like, "What's your name?" And I'd be like, "It's Oren," but everyone calls me OCAP.
Yeah, you could do it. I don't know that you're an OCAP. I don't know that your work is an OCAP's work. Do you know what I mean? Like Tarsum, You're like, yeah.
Well, because he defined Tarsum. I mean,
Right,
that's why
but
we
like,
think that.
I bet there's probably listeners at home who are like, I don't know who Tarsum is, but like, you can kind of
He
believe
directed
it's ethereal and artsy fartsy. Yeah, Tarsum's references.
The J-Lo. The Fall. Yeah.
The Fall and The Cell. Those movies are old. I worked in a video store when I had to shelve those movies. So video stores had to be open, and I had to work there. So that's 25 years ago. Are these references?
Yeah, I'm looking at different websites. Like Smuggler has a director named Rubber Band. I think we've looked at their work. And again, I guess it's always the duos and stuff that have the.
Well, a duo,
names.
you're just kind of like required to have some sort of moniker.
Yeah, some Bonnie and Allison or Bonnie and Allison.
No, they're Bonaparte
on Instagram, but I think their director names are Bonnie and Allison.
Is that right? Okay. I misremembered. Anyway.
So you're just suggesting against me coming up with a cool
I don't think
director name.
OCAB is so bad, but I don't know that it resembles your work. Like OCAB kind of sounds like a little like hip hop to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but in a stupid way.
Yeah. Anyway, before we talk to our buddies Andrew and Idan, Oren, we should talk about Magic Mind for a second.
Oh, shoot. I meant to bring it up with those guys.
Well, that's okay. We're going to talk about it right now.
I just got a shipment today.
I pulled your move where I saved it for a social situation. I had a day of like big calls.
Yeah, how big?
And I was like, pretty big. Like just like it's a Godfather reference. So, anyway, it went great. And I don't know if it's psychosomatic. I don't know if I would have done. I'm pretty good at like,
Wait, so walk me through the process. So you're like, okay, I have a big call at noon. It's 11:45.
So I had two. I had one at noon and I had one at 2. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take it at like 11:30, 11:45, because the less important of the two was the noon. I was like, okay, great. This will be like a little warm up. If it doesn't go great, it's not the end of the world. Who cares? The other one was the stakes were higher. And the second one being like a 2-hour converstion. So I was like, yes, I've got the endurance. I'm staying nimble. I'm staying opportunistic, focused. And I think honestly, the thing that's really helpful for me, all that's really great. I do feel that for me personally, I feel a little less stressed, and I've had a stressful month. Who hasn't? But I feel like a little bit more even keeled and a little more regulated thanks to it.
February 1st and 2nd were super, super stressful. So February 3rd, do some Magic Mind, take that stress off. My producer on this job I'm supposed to shoot next week, the one I brought to LA that has proven that the locations in LA have proven to be
a bit of a
challenging. Yeah. But we finally got our location today, and I was so relieved. But when I went to meet him at the Scout, he was like, Oren, he listens to the podcast. Like, Oren, you have any Magic Mind right now? Can you bring me some?
He's like, bring me some Magic Mind.
Yeah. He's like, I left the house. I forgot to take it this morning. Can you bring it? Like, I think it'll really like help the Scout go well. Cause he's so stressed out about just locking things. And sometimes when you're trying to lock a location, the location doesn't really care about your shoot in the way that you care about the location.
And they also just live in a totally different set of a different reality. The rate at which film production works is we're just lapping people, just email responsiveness, all that stuff. Like we have been trained to like be on it in a way that other people have the privilege not to be, Yeah.
It's one thing if you want to book someone's private home, but it's another thing if you're trying to book like a university or a resort or a restaurant or like a big chain, like a mall.
Those people have meetings and
to prove it.
Yeah. All that stuff.
And you shooting there is not their primary business. So
yeah. Like if they don't
really care about you,
book you, it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, so fingers crossed that these meetings all pan out thanks to Magic Mind.
You should do the test. Do 2 meetings. First one, no Magic Mind. Second one, Magic Mind. See if the second one feels better.
Yeah. They sent us along some sleep aid as well. Have you been taking the Sleepy Magic Mind?
I haven't, but I think I'm going to try it tonight because I had some coffee pretty late today, so early tomorrow. Yeah. Have you tried it yet?
I have. Yeah, I've had a handful of them because it's meant to be cumulative. So like, and jury's still out for sure. Like I wake up refreshed, but I don't really have a problem falling asleep. So, but it's nice. It's good. It feels good.
And just put on our podcast, pass out. So if you want a free way to fall asleep, listen to us. talking. But if you want to get a really good deal on Magic Mind, which as we are attesting here, and do people text you all the time and they're like, is this Magic Mind thing for real?
Yeah.
You're always texting me. If you want to try it, you can go to magicmind.com/shootitjan, even though it's February, right? That's our URL, and you will get 45% off your first shipment. And yeah, check it out. Let us know what you think. So far, it is working for us. It's working for all our friends that we know of that are using it. So yeah, magicmind.com/shootitjan, as in January, even though it's February. January. We know it. We know it's February, folks, but shoot it, Jan. Okay. Thanks, Magic Mind. Should we get on with the show?
Before we do, though, I want to mention it. I mentioned it at the end of the episode, but it bears repeating here. We're on TikTok now.
Oh, yeah.
I started posting on TikTok. It's also on Instagram. So give us a follow. It's a way to help the show grow. Like if you share it, all of that stuff. I feel reinvigorated about the show. I decided I'm going to cut these. I really want to get my hands dirty. I want to kind of just figure it out a little bit more. And so it just felt really good to be engaged with the community again. And also I posted a clip from an episode or two ago where we talked about catchphrases, and we talked about how my catchphrase is pencils down. And I got tons of messages from people being like, yes, you do say that.
Really?
It's not an exaggeration. You didn't share it on your personal feed, so I think that's part of it.
Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, you should. But yeah, if you go to Just Shoot a Pod on Instagram or TikTok, give us a follow because that's really helpful.
Yeah. Speaking of ignoring your catchphrase of pencils down, you can also check out our Patreon, patreon.com/justshootapod. Throw some bones into the bone pile.
In the coffer.
And that'll help us, lose less money. Anyhow, let's get to the episode.
Well, were you going to ask me if I was related to Laura Kightlinger, the stand-up comic?
No, I was going more like in the Kite Runner direction.
Oh, okay.
The book.
I was trying to remember Laura Kightlinger. I couldn't remember her first name. Are you related to her?
I have no idea. One would think. I think she's part of the Pennsylvania Kightlinger's, and there is a contingent of my background that's from Pennsylvania somehow.
So Andrew and Idan, you guys made a movie, Lost on a Mountain in Maine, and I'm curious. I watched the movie, and it's awesome. It's based on a true story.
I have not, but the trailer looks great, guys.
And tell us the origin story. It's a story that takes place in 1939. It's about a kid that gets lost on a mountain. I don't remember what state it's in.
It's in Maine. It's in the title.
Maine. It's in okay. Sorry, I stopped reading the title like 3 words in.
It's a long one.
And then it's kind of about his survival. So it's kind of...
I have a question, though. Did you guys ever entertain the idea of just calling it Lost on a Mountain?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We realized Maine is important.
But ChatGPT was like, no, the Maine is going to be really long.
It's, I think where that comes from, that actually answers 2 questions. The one's Oren's and Matt's. The story, that kid who survived ended up writing a book about his ordeal. Mm-hmm. That book became this perennial classic for grade school students in New England. So every 3rd and 4th grade kid reads it. So when it's
like you guys made like The Hatchet or Island of the Blue Dolphin, or the exactly. I'm embarrassed because as a 3rd grader, I loved survivalist children's literature. This would have been right up my alley. I'm sorry, guys.
This one was very specific to that region, and ultimately that's where the title, because I think I lobbied for Lost on a Mountain a lot. And I was like, I think I wanted to call it Lost at one point. Just like, this is Pixar, and call it Lost.
Yeah. And then J.J. Abrams was like,
you can't do it. He called me personally. He's like, you can't do it.
It's like,
So that's why it's called what it is, And I think one of the way I justified it to myself emotionally was that my favorite movie of all time is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and that's also a long title.
Remember when Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind came out, and everyone's like, I don't know what the hell that movie is called.
And what do we call it, guys? What do we call it?
Eternal Sunshine.
Lost on a Mountain.
It was interesting in prep. We would run into people throughout the whole process every so often. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, I read that book when I was in 4th grade. Yeah, I remember Don Chandler coming to my class and talking about his experience."
Oh, like a local hero sort of vibe too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's
Spoiler alert.
A friend of ours was standing in for our lens tests, and he saw the slate and he goes, "Wait a second, I read that book."
That's awesome. So how did you, Andrew, you'd made a couple movies before this, right?
Yeah,
What
I
movie is
directed, this is my third feature technically, but my first quote unquote bigger one. I directed two micro budget movies before that. I grew up in South Dakota, and in South Dakota, I raised money through dentists and doctors and whatnot, and raised, a couple $100,000 here and there, and directed two features. One of them was like a B sci-fi film, which I made when I was 23 and had no business doing anything of the sort, but I did. But it was an education, a microcosm. And then I did an indie feature in my mid-20s, which led to this one. And that was a movie that called Tater Tot and Patton that sort of, I used it as a calling card to show that A, I could direct actors, and then B, I could make a movie that had good framing and was cohesive, all the hallmarks of a movie. And then this project was incubated in Sylvester Stallone's company. I did not write the script. I'm a writer-director by trade, but I wanted the challenge of directing something I hadn't written. I was also desperate for a project. And my managers brought me this thing and said, hey, Stallone's company is producing this PG-rated family movie. And, I had to audition for it against about 10 other directors. And what appealed to me about doing it, once I read the script, what appealed to me is that it reminded me of all the movies I grew up with as a kid that were both awe-inspiring, but also kind of creepy and kind of like, they scared me. So like The Black Stallion and Empire of the Sun and, Dark Crystal, and we even mentioned The Never-Ending Story, those types of movies that they had an edge to them, but they were still family friendly. I thought, what a fun challenge to make one of those movies. So it was sort of, for me, a nostalgia play, to be honest. And I pitched my heart out and did about 3 interviews over the course of the summer of 2022. And my final interview was me being flown out to the titular mountain in northern Maine, which is known as the hardest day hike in America, and having to actually hike that mountain as my final interview, which is about a 6-hour hike up.
Stallone was waiting at the top.
He was at the top. Yeah.
He's like, you got the job, kid.
You got the job.
Were you wearing sweats and you ran up the mountain?
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. And I did. I was like this the whole time. I should have done that in hindsight. Damn it.
Yeah. I'm sure he loves when people just yell, yo, Adrian to him.
Yeah.
Yo, Adrian.
So you're
that's how
serious.
this came about, man.
But in all seriousness, why was the final interview on the mountain?
Because it felt right. We had a producer. It was very important for the producer for the movie to be as authentic as possible. And not only authentic in terms of, because the movie does stretch the truth here and there, but to understand the hero, to be in the shoes, whoever was going to direct this movie had to understand this is what this was like. So not only did I climb that mountain, which is very hard, I also bushwhacked that week, and we were bushwhacking through where the kid actually got lost, and we canoed up the river, and we did all kinds of stuff. So just to put me in that mind frame, and I grew up, not only did I grow up in South Dakota, but I also grew up in Madagascar. So I have a very kind of rainforest.
I want to get back to that.
We've seen the movie.
Yeah, sure. I think the plot of Madagascar is the animals are New Yorkers and they moved to Madagascar. So
is that really?
Yeah, they're like a bunch of like New York zoo animals.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, neurotic in Madagascar.
Beverly Hills Chihuahua, right?
There's a strange Beverly Hills Chihuahua runner this year. Anyway, I want to go back to talk about this experience of hiking the mountain into bushwhacking a little bit more, because I don't think we've heard of thorough interview processes before and pitching your heart out and all that stuff. But whose idea was it that you had to go fly to Maine to climb a mountain?
And also, how many directors? Because I guess I'm having trouble believing this story.
Yeah. Like, did you have the
directors and whoever
photographic evidence?
Yeah.
Were they doing?
I believe you did it, but like,
were they doing an Amazing Race episode? Of who gets to direct this?
Well, we each were
there's a
given
charming
a knife.
60-year-old couple that didn't make it, basically.
Well, we each got a knife, and I killed the other 9. So they're on the mountain.
Sure. Yeah.
And I got to the top with holding a liver in my hand. No, I was the only one that had to do that. I think I got far enough along in the process. And it was one of the producers. It wasn't producer Stallone's company. We had a producer who helped finance the film and whatnot. And it was just really important to him that I get to experience this. And again, because I grew up in the wilderness quite a bit, I was all game for it. And I kind of like the tangible sort of Werner Herzogian way of making movies without killing people, of course. So this just immediately appealed to me. And I never once thought to myself that this is an insane request. I was like, yeah, let's do it. It really didn't dawn on me that because a lot of people go, you actually had to hike the mountain to get the job. I probably would have gotten the job even without. I don't know. I can't answer that question, but I was glad to do it and I had a great time.
It's kind of like maybe this is me guessing, but like you're kind of the choice, and like
it's yours to lose.
Floated. Yeah, it's yours
exactly.
to lose. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think deep down inside, I thought to myself, if I don't do it, I won't get it. Maybe that was
sure. Yeah,
but I also wanted to do it. Yeah, but I still wanted to do it because I love hiking.
Oh yeah, there's no good hikes in LA, so totally get it. The music box steps in Silver Lake wouldn't have scratched your itch. Andrew, I'm really curious. Like, why do you think you beat out the other directors for the job? Like, what?
I think it came cheaper.
No, there's no way that's. I mean, I guess I truly believe that like that is almost. That would never be a reason why a director got a job or didn't get a job. And I know you were joking, but just for our listeners that are like, oh, maybe I didn't get the job because I asked for like $1,000 a day and somebody else did it for $500 a day.
Sure.
Like, the director is such an important element of a movie that I feel like that's,
And also if you come in high, they're just like, we don't have that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then you meet them somewhere. No, in all honesty, I came in with the right kind of vision and ethos for it. I immediately, one of my first things I did once I knew they wanted to talk to me is I put together a very thorough, like visual shot deck of the movie. And I had very specific types of movies on there. I had a lot of Terrence Malick because I knew in order to do this movie at the budget level that we had it, which was sub 10 million, that I wanted to shoot a lot of natural light and shoot handheld. I also at the same time wanted to push and do some Spielbergian things. So I had a mix. I had Empire of the Sun, I had Black Stallion, I had Terrence Malick. I had also the movie The Kings of Summer, if you remember that movie.
Alison Brie.
Yeah, so I had that in there. And so that was my first meeting, was just saying, like, I understand what the parameters are. I also understand that I'm going to be given a box to carry that's already kind of halfway built as a director for hire. So I just at every turn went into every interview understanding the assignment and also showing that I had the leadership acumen to push this thing forward. I never worked in visual effects before. I never built a mountain before. So if it's informative to the people listening, one of my things was being really honest about the fact I'd never worked with VFX before. I'd never done set builds before. I can direct actors. I know how to put a story together, but there's a lot of things I was going to learn. But my whole thing was one of the director's jobs is to delegate and to surround him or herself with the best people for the job around them, like somebody like Idan or a production designer or AD, people that know what to do. And I leaned on those people a lot. So you surround yourself with a great team.
Yeah, I love that so much because I think that especially early on, you think you're supposed to be the person with all of the answers, right? And, to a certain extent, everyone always has to delegate at some point. You hear these stories of like Soderbergh or Cameron or these people who are just like, masters of every aspect of the trade. But for the vast majority of us mere mortals, you're always relying on your department heads to execute, and you're learning from them constantly as well, right? So pretending like you know everything that you're supposed to know at the beginning is I think that's
fallacy.
folly.
I think that's folly. I think even those people, James Cameron's one of my favorite directors, and yes, I do admire the fact that he's almost godlike in the sense that he knows, I can't even put together a C-stand. People are gonna like laugh, but I really don't trust me with it, right? I can, but don't trust me with it.
Andrew, you'll be shocked to know they come in one piece.
You just usually will see me just banging it against a wall and trying to get it to open, but I'm exaggerating, but to me, it takes a village to make a movie, and so you just you got to find the right people in the village,
right? You got to
from my perspective, I'd say it's really refreshing when you speak to a director who can confidently say, "Hey, this is sort of what I understand, and these are the things that I need your help with," because it sort of enables us to do our jobs, better in a sense, because there's not this concern, that we're going to butt heads. We're really all on the same page about pushing a project forward and supporting, singular vision.
That's funny. I'm working with a new DP this week, and he asked me a question that a DP has never asked me before, which was, what do you want out of a DP? Do you want them to pitch shots? Do you want them to just do the technical stuff? Do you want to them to discuss like lenses and white balance with you, or do you want to not think about that at all? And I kind of, I gave him probably like a 3-hour answer on
Sure.
things I like, things I like about DPs. And then
If you go to Patreon.pod, you can hear Oren's one side of the front of as a bonus piece of content. I'm curious, Idan, because you've worked with, countless directors over the years, do you feel like if you were to ask that question of directors in general, do you feel like they would actually know the answer? Do you know what I mean? There's one thing for me to say like, oh, Idan, I really need you to do X, Y, and Z. But like, I feel like I'd probably be a little bit wrong, right?
But he did just say that Andrew kind of told him, these are the things I feel super confident about. These are the things like I'd love for you to kind of help out with.
Yeah, I think for me, I kind of subscribe to the idea of the cinematographer sort of in service of a director's vision, and even
go on,
and through that process, through that process, I can contribute sort of my aesthetic taste or my perspective as a storyteller. But I struggle when I sort of see instances of cinematographers who really butt heads with their directors and don't trust and follow their lead. So that's sort of my personal approach to how I work with the director. I try to follow their lead in that regard. And so I do value that conversation of, oh, this is what I need from you because this is what I feel really strongly about. Because if a director comes to me and says like, I want to shoot the entire movie on a 35 until this one scene in the third act, we're going to switch to a 24 mil and we're going to stay on a 24 mil until the climax, or what, if they have this like one singular strong opinion, I'd love to talk to them about it more to contextualize it. But I also acknowledge that director has sat with the script 10 times longer than I have.
Sure.
And so I think a lot of the filmmakers I admire subscribe to that. And so I just try to follow suit.
Yeah. I've worked with Idan a few times and he's, I'm like a director that likes to touch the camera and dolly a lot. And also we used to talk about this a lot, but I love touching editors' keyboards and they really don't like it. But I remember Idan was like, you want to operate this shot? And I was like, I don't know. I guess maybe he's like, it doesn't bother me if like a director wants to touch the camera, wants to operate a little bit. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that. There's definitely DPs that get annoyed by that.
I love it because like we all came from the same place. Like I feel like everyone has that shared, whether you were on DV or, or 8mm or whatever, wherever your start was, like we all came from a camera operating background. Like before we knew how to make movies, we freaking just picked up cameras and did it. And there's a joy to that. And especially if a director expresses a desire to do it, why deny that joy? They have a very clear idea of what the frame is. And, I'm also not the kind of person, like, obviously, if they're terrible, I'm going to gently figure out a way to get them off the camera.
Great. Mind if I shoulder up and try it this time?
Yeah.
I think I see what you're going for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think there's a way to manage it. But I don't think I've had a single instance with maybe Andrew, right? But I don't think I've had an instance of a director, enjoying operating and then me saying, "Woof, that was pretty awful. Let me take it." So I didn't necessarily try to operate, but he would grab the handle once in a while.
Yeah, and it was kind of a purposeful thing. I think like on our first meeting, what I was looking for was somebody I just shared taste with. I think that solves a lot of your problems right off the bat. And we immediately loved the same movies. I think we were gushing about Lord of the Rings and Assassination with Jesse James and all. We were gushing about assassinations in general, and kidding. And, no, we weren't. And that sort of like leveled the playing field. And as far as like, I'm good with shooting with the iPhone, and I used to shoot all the time in high school and college. But these cameras now, they're so damn heavy. And I don't, and like Idan's an amazing operator. Why should I even pretend to be as good as he is? So every so often, though, I would sort of, I don't like perfection in movies all that much in terms of like the image. I like a little bit of grit, and so it's like, well, let's just like shake that up a bit. He's like, what are you doing? But mostly just drum off. But
Andrew would occasionally just like a sweet little embrace from behind and then just shake my elbow.
Some of those shots made the movie. Yeah, some of those shots are in the film.
Yeah. I mean, watching the movie, there is obviously, the story kind of splits off into like a two-hander, right? The kid that's lost and his family that's trying to find him. And this is a perfect segue to this topic I wanted to bring up, but I think it's a little premature to bring it up. So I'm going to come back to it. But a big, thing, Matt, you haven't seen the movie, but the kid gets lost because they're on top of this mountain and it's insanely foggy. Like so foggy, you can't see like 5 feet away from you. And if you fly a plane, it's just like pure cloud, right? And so, this kid is trying to go home by himself because he's mad at his family members, and he gets lost, and then they have to find him. But I'm curious, you mentioned you worked with the effects, but you also maybe gave away that you built part of this mountain. How did you approach like creating this fog? Like, I mean, it's literally like this whole mountain is covered in fog, and I'm assuming part of it or a big part of it is artificial. Can you guys talk a little bit about how you do this very specific weather phenomenon?
Well, that's so the reason that the movie, so that entire sequence in the film is a combination of real shots on the real mountain where we took a crew up to the top of it. We hiked it with an RE Alexa to the top. An 18-hour day. It was insane. It's also a combo of a build on a soundstage for 2 days of shooting. It's also just a little bit of VFX in there. But that's a prime example of me not knowing what the hell I wanted, like not knowing what I wanted it to look like and feel like, but having no idea how to execute it, and literally going to Idan and to our production designer, Darcy Scanlon, and saying, "The hell do we do this?" And they both said, "You got to build it." Idan especially is like, "You got to build it." Idan had worked in a bunch, especially like Idan, you'd done a music video, I think, or something. Was it a music video? I don't remember. Right. Idan just is encyclopedic about it. He's like, "Oh, in Pirates, they did it this way." And I'm like, "Okay, great." And
if you build it, we will fog.
We will fog. Idan, I have some hunches as to why you said build it, but I'd love to hear like what was your rationale? What was take us back in time? Pitch us on why we should do it the way you did it.
Yeah, I read the script, and that was like one of the big questions just right off the bat. Was like, okay, they go up a mountain. No one's going to let us take children up a real mountain.
Can I ask how old your main actor was?
He was 12.
No way. The main kid is 12?
Yeah.
The exact age that the real kid was when he got lost.
Oh wow. He's got a lot of maturity to him, like as a human being.
So even if you wanted to take him on location, like literally you'd hike up there and you'd be like, well, in overtime you got to go back down.
We're going to get one shot and hike back them out. So
I'm assuming it's SAG and
it's the whole enchilada.
The safety side of the logistical timing, and then specifically Katahdin, like to take a helicopter, they're not going to let us land with crew and gear, because there's that version, right? There's the Lord of the Rings version of it where they were flying crew and cast with helicopters all over the country. But the Lord of the Rings was not a $5 million indie movie, so we needed to figure out a way to do it economically, safely, and still have it look real and threatening. And so in the script, it's described that as they go up, the conditions worsen, and by the time they get to the top, it's literally in the script that they can't see more than 5 feet ahead of them, because that's really what happened to Don and his family. So we had this huge conversation pretty early on. Even before I was hired, I was saying like, I should talk to the production as soon as, I can get on board about building this segment, because we can only get so far up the mountain with location work. And we did a good amount of location work with the cast in upstate New York.
And was it foggy?
It was a combination of incredibly good timing for the weather. It was a space that we scouted, and on the scout, it was perfect conditions. And so we just all prayed. And I kept joking that we should probably like sacrifice a PA to the film gods to make it.
We did.
Which we did. And then on the day, the fog was there, and there was a really good base layer, and it was very misty. And then we had an SFX team running smoke in addition to it to get it to like a fuller and more consistent as well.
This is outdoors, like in the wind.
Running like giant tubes of death. That was actually one of the first conversations with the line producer. I said, I'll make a lot of concessions on gear, on manpower. You got to get me for run of show. Like we needed SFX people every day, pretty much every day of that movie. But anyway, back to the mountain, I knew we needed to build it. And kind of the reason why I knew that was, like Andrew said, I've just studied so many films that have done sequences in this vein, or, Pirates of the Caribbean, or literally the Mount Everest movie. I'm just an avid reader of the ASC magazine. And so just I kind of drew from what I had read about similar sequences, and I felt really strongly that we could accomplish it on stage and without green screen. That was really important to me. I didn't want to get into that world of we kind of put a green screen on surrounding the cast. Now we're restricted to the angles that we can cover.
I mean, also the haze would just be green.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I knew that if we did green, then that meant the next conversation is, well, we can't have smoke.
Right. It's all like fake smoke.
Exactly. So it was a cascading like series of issues if we went down that road. And you know, it was requested that we respectfully explore that option. And we spoke with a supervisor, and it was
LED
not a great,
wall be anything?
not cost effective. Could be cool, but even LED walls, they also struggle with smoke and particulate effects. It's possible, but it's very limiting. And at our budget level, we'd have like a half wall, and then at that point, it's just an expensive green screen.
Yeah.
So after our call with the SFX supervisor, and after, you know, I put together a proposal, and our production designer, Darcy, who was incredible, she kind of was working out what the build would look like. We managed to get production on board, and the idea was, or the pitch was, if we just surround this thing in gray muslin and do practical SFX smoke and rain rigs and misters and wind, the only VFX you might need is to clean up gaps. You know, if there's ever a little gap and you see a ruffle or something, and that's so much easier.
Right.
To go
and also
in there
adding layers of like fog is pretty easy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But especially if they're not like, don't need to wrap around the actors and stuff, because you already have that.
Right. Yeah. Or
Exactly.
I was going to say, you know, unpack this just a tiny bit more for us, because I think my layman's understanding, right, is like, okay, you can certainly layer on semi-transparent layers of fog, or so rotoscope somebody out, put stuff in the background, all of that stuff. But the problem is that you're never interacting with the fog, right? The fog never billows as you're moving through it, or wraps around you, or contours in any way. And that, I think, is probably quite expensive. Like that's a full-on 3D particle sim, and that comes together.
And the atmosphere also,
right?
Yeah, it lowers the contrast, it lowers the visibility as things get farther away from the camera, which is, you kind of need to have like depth information to do that in post, which becomes pretty expensive.
The irony of what we did there, and again, I put so much faith in the department heads because they're great and professional, and I knew that, I trusted them. But I didn't really know that this would work until the day we were on set. Like when I'd watch as we were shooting, you know, they were building a mountain. They built like an 80-foot by 80-foot replica of the peak of the mountain. They were building it. They were painting it. They have lichen experts come in and paint actual lichen that look like the lichen. You know, they researched the actual lichen on the mountain.
Is lichen is that a plant?
Yeah,
it's like moss.
Kind of.
The moss,
yeah, like a moss. You can eat it.
It sounds like Lord of the Rings thing.
It's delicious.
You can make a little soup with it. But it wasn't until we came in there the day of, and Idan set up the camera, and he said, "Look through that," you know. And I looked through it, and oh, this is going to work. Like I really didn't know till the day of. So you're putting a lot of faith into people, and of course, it's easy too because they know what they're doing. But that's part of the process.
And you're doing day and nighttime. You're doing daytime and nighttime mountaintop stuff on the stage.
It never goes to
it's
night.
just the day.
There.
It's just the day.
Yeah. But we did like the whole, essentially like once the boys leave their father, and it's just the two boys and Henry, Ethan Slater, the three of them, once they go up, there's like a couple little pieces that are from the actual mountain, and then we're pretty much like on a stage for the remainder of that sequence. And something, you know, even though we were able to get the art department knocked it out of the park, we got the lighting where it needed to be, we got the smoke and all the SFX things where it needs to be. I do remember part of what actually tied it together and made it believable, because we got there and it looked great through the camera. And then when the actors walked through it, I remember Andrew saying, "This looks dumb. Something's wrong." And, you know, they had,
good note.
It was like, what's not
That's
working?
my direction.
Something doesn't feel right. Yeah. I mean, you know, he's looking at it like something's not right.
Idan, can you make it good, please?
Yeah.
I go to the
Let's
actors.
go one more time, but more real and better. Thanks.
Yeah.
He noticed something that I would never think of, right? And that's why he's the director. He noticed that the cast wasn't struggling to walk across the set.
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah.
Because we built a set and we placed all the rocks in the perfect position so that there was like a really easy path to walk through it. And so that was a really good judgment call, because he's like, we got to make it harder for them to step through. And that's also what sells it. It's not just the aesthetic, but it's like, how do they interact with it?
100 jumping jacks and then do the scene.
No, he started rearranging the rocks to make it really hard to walk through the path, like so that they had to actually kind of scramble over things. And
The beauty of
careful with their
being
stepping.
the beauty of being the director is that you can circumvent most union rules. And you can just go in and start picking stuff up, because you kind of like,
Oh yeah, they love that.
you don't have the rock.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to mention like one of the kind of the fun ironies of building that set and shooting the way we did it and executing it the way that Idan and Darcy said we should do it, and it worked beautifully, is that when we did hike the actual mountain with a small skeleton crew after the shoot, so we shot the whole movie, and then after post-production, we did like a couple weeks of editing. We figured out, okay, we need this, the B-roll. We always had a little shoot in Maine planned. We took a splinter unit up there.
Oh, that's cool.
And when we hiked the mountain, which again, we hiked the mountain on a stormy day. We needed a day where it was going to be shitty weather. And we hiked it. And when we got to the top, and again, weather was our friend. It was rainy and shrouded in fog. We stood there on the top of this mountain and went, this looks just like we're on a soundstage.
Yeah.
We didn't have to come up here. That was kind of the irony of it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I thought you guys did a great job. Like I watched the movie today. I did not know that it was shown on a stage, So
That's amazing because that's all I
I'm glad
see.
it worked. Yeah.
Is
Of course.
Well,
we know.
it's funny because what I was going to say about the beauty of this approach is that it's truly a what you see is what you get sort of results. Whereas oftentimes when you're in VFX, you're like, boy, I hope this green screen works out, or like whatever, the CG character, it better look good. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you're disappointed, and like that thing of like, oh, what's wrong? How do I fix this? You can, if you're literally in a physical space, you can say more fog, add some rocks for them to scramble over, all of that stuff. But when it comes to reanimating something, or, it gets very expensive very quickly. And all of a sudden, perhaps your vocabulary falls away, like your experience and your skills. Andrew, to your point, you know how to direct actors, so you could direct them in that environment rather than hoping that they can, conjure it in their minds in a virtual environment.
yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly important lesson that I feel like we all like learn and relearn all the time, but that sometimes it's the actor's performance is what sells things, I mean, we've all shot that scene where someone's like in a loud club, but it's not loud and they're just talking in a normal volume, and you're like on take 4 and you're like, wait, you guys, you should be yelling every
Yeah.
You're in the really
and
loud,
straining to hear too.
yeah.
It's a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
For your movie, there's like, I've started saying this before, but it splits up into the story of the kid that's lost on the mountain and his family. And I assume earlier on when we talked about how Andrew was like shaking the camera a bit, that's when we're with the kid. The kid's getting really weak, and it's a survival movie, but also he has so much dirt on him. There's like a whole leech sequence, a very Stand By Me reminiscent sequence. Were those real leeches, or what's
The leeches. The leeches are a combo of 10,000 different things. I feel like if I would have had my way, I would have had real leeches, and we would have put them on the child. And the child was into it. He was game. He was game man for everything. He's like,
yeah,
I'll
good
put
for you.
leeches on me. Yeah. I was like, oh yes. Willem Dafoe puts them on him in Speed 2. Remember? And he's anyway. I just rewatched that movie, so that's why.
Why Speed 2?
Because
Cruise control. Look out.
It's not a great movie, but I just love watching it. And so anyway, of course, everybody's like, you can't put leeches on the child. I'm like, okay. So we had
everyone at home. You can't put leeches on a child.
You can't do this. Couldn't, I guess.
Yeah. And so we had just fake leeches. We had little rubber leeches, and then in the VFX process, under the learning thing, we had this wonderful company called Mode FX. And what they did is said, we can put leeches on them, but you need to go find a stock footage of leeches you love, and then we'll basically cut them out and put them on the body. So I spent a lot of time on like Adobe stock looking at leeches sucking blood from patients that had blood cancer, which was disgusting. And then those eventually ended up on the kid. And somehow that sequence
we
works.
Still use leeches we still use leeches in the medical field?
Yeah, why not? So much cheaper than doctors.
We're still bloodletting?
Yeah. Have you been on leechhub.com?
Leech Hub. No.
Some of the
I don't know enough about leeches. I'm curious, why couldn't you just get like a little, like, are they that wiggly is really what I'm asking, right? Because couldn't you just get like a rubber wormy looking guy
we
and then stick it to the kid with a little bit of blood, right?
we
They just
kind
don't
of
move
had to.
the right way.
They still wiggle. Yeah.
Yeah, they
You
would
need to
still
see
just
that.
look, and it does,
And-
it's. No, go ahead, Idan.
Oh, I was gonna say, and then there's one shot of a real live leech.
Yes.
Once he takes the fake one off and puts it on the ground, it cuts to like an actual leech that we found in a river in Maine, and Andrew had to direct the leech across the frame.
That's cool.
Did you just
Mark Carter leech act like he
Yeah,
just
yeah.
sucked some blood? Dude.
Yeah, suck some blood.
I mean, that
Did
was a
you,
wild thing.
Was that kind of like, was that a guerrilla sort of like, hey, somebody go find a leech? Or did you
I
have like a
literally
leech wrangler?
I literally stood at the edge of a lake. Again, I grew up in Africa, so I was very used to leeches being all over my body all the time. So you stand on the edge of a lake, and leeches can just smell your blood. You don't have to cut yourself or anything. And I stood at the edge of this lake, and leeches just started swimming up to my toes. I just swooped them up, scooped the cute little guys up in my hand, took them to a rock, and then we just kind of started shooting close-ups of them. And I was swearing at them quite a bit, actually, because they weren't doing what I wanted them to do.
I love that so much. And I hope that there was some PA where this was their first movie and there just was like,
I guess this is how you make
the
movies.
director just beckoned for leeches he summoned the leeches and
He
then
like
we
Snow White
sacrificed them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and I hope that PA got paid $200,000 at NY to go to film school at NYU.
Yeah, you just summoned the leeches.
Yeah, the direction I was going in and totally derailed myself as usual with the leeches was about the continuity of the dirt on the kid. Because he goes through, like, he's bleeding, he's dirty, he loses parts of his clothes. How did you keep track of, like, making sure that, did you shoot the movie in order, basically? Or did you have, like, a really complicated matrix?
I wish. No. We shot the movie very out of order. So out of order. So the makeup artist had done makeup art on 12 Years a Slave. So he was used to sort of the chronicling the deterioration of a person. So we discussed early on about giving the kid 4 stages, essentially, or 5, I believe. And then we'd always remember that. But as we shot this movie, we shot most of the pants stuff with the kid and with the pants in the first half of the shoot. And then we wrapped everybody, and then we just isolated the kid on his own, which ended up working well performance-wise. But on the last day of shooting, I believe we shot something almost like 50 setups. And those setups were just the kid alone in the woods. And we weren't shooting those in order. So we were going between different phases of it, the beginning of his journey, the end of his journey. So we were
You're like, okay, phase 5 dirt. Okay, now level 2 dirt.
And then sometimes we had to like
the costume.
Yeah.
And then sometimes sometimes we had to like take off dirt and put it back on, and bug bites and all this stuff. And we just prep. Again, like one of those things that especially in a movie with a certain budget size, any movie, doesn't matter if you have $300 million, $5 million, or 130, prepare, and that will set you up for success. You're still going to have things that are thrown at you that you can't control, but your makeup, what your movie looks like, is something that you can control as much as possible ahead of time. So you might as well do it. Otherwise you'd be lazy, in my opinion.
Cool. Well, I had this topic that I had brought up. We've been trying to set this interview up for months, and I was in Thailand working with a cinematographer at the time, and we had this kind of debate, and I thought it'd be interesting to have, since we have a DP and a director on at the same time, to bring it up here. And I've worked with Idan too. So Matt, have you worked with Idan? I forget.
We have, but I was trying to remember, have you shot anything for me? You have, right?
Yeah, I did
like
that.
College Humor stuff.
Yeah, it was College Humor. Yeah, it was a parody of American Sniper.
Oh yeah, which I love.
Yeah. It's like the baby's a football, right?
Yeah. So the baby in the American Sniper, Oscar-nominated film, huge movie that year. There's a scene where Bradley Cooper is just like holding a baby doll they got at a Toys R Us, just like the fakest looking baby. And because we shot this sketch, I looked it up and I was just like, they had 3 babies lined up. None of them showed up. So Clint was like, give him the doll or whatever.
Clint Eastwood famously will not go overtime or anything. He just wants to shoot.
2 takes. He's wrapped at 8 p.m. or whatever it is, 6 p.m. and that's that.
I do think on that note of you guys recreating this Oscar-winning movie, Idan is, I think of you as a pretty serious cinematographer, and you try to get the best gear you can, the best lenses, the best camera, and you're super thoughtful about shots and about things. And being ready and being prepared. We did a tourism campaign in Branson, Missouri, and I feel like I was gonna, I don't usually phone things in, but I was gonna do it pretty scrappy, and you kind of brought it up to like the next level, as a cinematographer. You're like, let's get this, and I'm gonna bring my first out. We're gonna, basically kind of made it good. And so that kind of relates to this story. The cinematographer that I was shooting in Thailand, he shot my first feature. He shoots Ted Lasso. He shoots a lot of good stuff. And we shot this scene where these two guys are having this fight in a kitchen, like a restaurant kitchen. And while we were rehearsing, I was just shooting different angles on my iPhone, right? And then at the end of the day, we were like, okay, here I shot 5 different options. Let's do this option. We only have time to shoot one with like Alexa 35 and the, robot arm and all the junk we had, right? And so we shoot the whole thing. We shoot this whole shoot. Everything goes well, whatever. And then we're editing the piece, and there's a shot where on the TV is these people running into the kitchen and fighting. And the shot that we shot was this awesome shot, but it was really hard to understand what was going on in the shot because there's like fires and there's extras and there's people.
Where should we look? All of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and it was this complicated Steadicam shot, and it's on a TV, so it's kind of small in frame as it is. And so while we were playing around with the edit, I was like, hey, I shot these rehearsals on my iPhone. The set was lit. It was with the real actors. They were in the wardrobe. They were doing the blocking.
I'm watching Idan's face closely.
I was running behind them, and I had this really great clear shot on my iPhone, of these two guys busting through this door.
You guys, to be clear, like Oren alluded to it, but this is a big budget spot. He's flying all over the world. He's got all the toys. That footage looks good.
Yeah, so it's not like a micro budget thing where or like a montage where it's like half of it's shot on iPhone, half it's shot. It's the whole thing's shot on like Alexa 35 with
everything else looks like a
whatever.
movie.
Yeah.
And Oren's pitching, what if I added my iPhone footage to this?
Well, as they're putting it together, it's on a small screen. It's a really quick graphic shot of two guys busting through a door, but from an angle that we are not even remotely close to having. We only have one other angle on this, and it's this really complicated Steadicam shot. And so we put it in there, to just show the client, like, well, we do have this one other angle that kind of answers all the notes of like, we have no idea what's going on. Long story short, we ended up not using the iPhone shot, but when I brought it up to my cinematographer, he was like, I mean, you wouldn't seriously use the iPhone shot. And I was like, why? I mean, it's on a TV. It's like the main shot is the nice shot. My iPhone shot is just on the TV. And we kind of got into this debate about, he felt like it would be deceitful to him as a cinematographer that we're using this iPhone shot because he's in charge of the image. And I remember when Idan and I shot in Branson, Missouri, I was shooting, the iPhone 13 Pro just came out, and it had this insane stabilizer and a wide angle lens. And we do the final spot, the kind of the big one that has the most shots did end up having like 2 of my iPhone shots in it. So I guess I'm curious hearing Andrew like shaking Idan's arms to get like to make the footage a little crappier to maybe connect more with the performance of the actor. I guess I was curious, just as directors and DPs, like what you guys think about this topic. Like, is it a real jerk move as a director to include a shot that's maybe from a lesser camera of a lesser quality if it helps the story?
Well, for first off, I have to mention that there is a shitty shot in this movie specifically left in just to piss off Idan.
Andrew's got an iPhone 6.
No, he shot it. No, he shot it, but it's
there was a problem with an underwater housing, and so fogged over.
Sure.
And so
classic. Tales all the time.
You guys have worked with underwater housings and splash bags. Like if the temperature of the water and the environment are not equal, you get the fog over. So it kind of looked like we had like a super pro mist filter.
Like everything was blooming and stuff.
It was like very bloomy. Yeah, it was very bloomy, and I was not a fan of the shot. And Andrew put it in the movie because it does tell the story better than the alternative.
And I think,
I'm going to cringe every time, and no one else is going to notice.
Sure. And I think you just answered like how I was going to answer it, which is, there are no iPhone shots in this movie, but there would be if we had one, because the truth is, unfortunately, and Idan and I are similar. What you said about Idan earlier, about Idan being like meticulous and like really caring, is why he's so good at what he does. And it was such a pleasure to work with you, Idan. I can't wait to do it again. But he also, and we both understand and we both care about the image so much. We really do. Like, I want my movies to be seen in movie theaters. That's why I'm a director, right? But at the same time, audiences don't give a shit. Like, they don't know the difference in the end. They truly don't. So if you cut in, whether you're Soderbergh and shooting an entire movie in the iPhone, or you're Peter Jackson and you're shooting a, scene in The Hobbit on GoPros, does the sound work? Is the music telling the story? The performance is good? That's what matters in the end. And there's like in the original script of this movie, and this movie went through a couple iterations, but in the original script of this film, there was a scene where the boy falls in the river and gets swept up in rapids. It's kind of your typical survival movie scene. And we cut it because of budget, and the movie became kind of more of a quasi-art film in a way. But there's a version when we'd been rehearsing this river sequence 3 weeks before production. Like, it was still in the script. And Idan and I were in water up to our necks, rehearsing how we'd shoot it and deciding we're going to shoot a river sequence where a kid's being pushed by rapids all in close-up. Kind of like they did with Liam Neeson in The Grey, kind of. And he shot test footage on the iPhone. And I still have that footage, and I look at it, I'm like, if we'd have shot that scene with the iPhone, with the kid in that water, we would have used it in the film and nobody would be the wiser. It would work just as well.
Yeah. Especially action stuff, quick cuts for sure. I think that's where, small cameras can really, win the day. I watch Fury Road probably once a year.
The 5D.
It's filled with that stuff. Like, there's little cameras all over the place.
I'm definitely someone who's going to try my best to keep the tools we use sort of consistent and keep the image at a level of quality, a standard that we've set for the film. But if the difference between a scene or a moment being more effective is me having to like take a backseat visually, like I'd gladly, agree to that every single time. Because I think when I started working as a cinematographer, there was a bigger focus on like, well, no, I can't use that, or we're not going to shoot it like that, or a little bit more obsessive over it looking great. And as in the, over a decade of working in film and commercials and music videos, I've definitely adopted more of a desire to just make a good movie, like tell a good story first and foremost, and I would love for it to be regarded as a beautiful work of cinematography, but I'd much rather it be first regarded as a good film. And so, with Lost on a Mountain, there's that shot, and I cringe every single time, but it doesn't matter because it's the right shot in that scene compared to.
And I must reiterate what he said too. Like, my goal is to make extremely cinematic movies because I believe that is why we go to movies.
Yeah. So a couple of things there, just to unpack it. I think there's part of what I'm hearing, or part of what I'm reminded of, I guess I should say, is that like we're kind of all of an age where the cinematography options that we had when we were starting out, when we were really young, did limit the quality of image that we could produce, right? But essentially, I'm saying like, and I might be a touch older than you guys, but effectively, you could shoot on film or you could shoot on digital, and digital didn't look good enough yet, right? So like, it could make a quality image. There's awesome stuff that, there's features shot on stuff that was available back then. We're not all David Lynch and Danny Boyle. So cinematographers, I think, were of a certain age, were obsessed with image quality, partially as a self-preservation or as a way of proving themselves, right? So there's that, and it makes sense for you to be like, okay, well, I care about that. And then also, the relationship of a director and a cinematographer is such that the cinematographer is supposed to be the guardian of the image, right? And so you protect it as best you can. And then if the circumstances, whether that's a producer or a director or whomever, says, hey, we got to compromise in some way, everybody gets it. Everyone's a team player, right? And so like that, but if you had a cinematographer who didn't care and was like, yeah, sure, shoot on whatever, then all of a sudden, to Andrew's point, you end up with a movie that people maybe don't want to see, or that subliminally they understand is is of a different quality or scope, or doesn't give you the feeling that you were aiming for in the first place, right? That's what you're really fighting against, Idan.
Yeah.
Not like quality. It's like, no, I want people to have this seamless cinematic experience. And now an iPhone can give you that sometimes.
Yeah. And
when we were growing up, it couldn't,
Of course, yeah. And it's all about what's the right tool, and is that tool going to accomplish something that you couldn't do otherwise? And so, like with Oren's example, with the go-kart scene, like the fact of the matter is, what the tools we had at the time and the time we had to shoot with our cameras, we didn't accomplish as visceral or as honestly interesting of an image, even though it was a nicer camera, nicer lenses, super stabilized. On a gimbal, on a Segway, and our operator was great. You got really great shots.
Kaplan.
But literally,
it's also the funny thing is I shot during the day, and by the time the Alexa was ready, it was night.
Yeah,
it's just a different vibe.
But also, like literally, Oren holding a phone, driving a go-kart, and getting the lens, at someone's wheel,
a foot away.
It's just a much more engaging frame. It says it's far more sort of energized frame. And so, like, for us to do that with our cameras, that's like 2 days of go-kart shots, right? And a rigging team and rigging, full camera builds on speed rail. Like we've done those jobs before where you just have a whole day to do like a handful of shots where you're just rigging cameras on cars. That was not in the cards for us. And so I'm so glad that he went out and shot what he did, because it's far more engaging in the final edit.
Well, a good example on this movie where we kind of heard this conversation. I think there's a great ethical conversation, to be honest. One regret I have on this film is that there's not enough animals in it. I'm a huge animal guy. It's a wilderness movie. There's not enough animals. We had a 20-day shoot, so there wasn't much time, and we also didn't have a budget to be able to afford all these things. So when we were in the editing process, the editor and I actually sourced a lot of stock animal footage, moose, bear, foxes, all that stuff, and we ended up not using it, because it all felt so different. So the thing is you can shoot in the iPhone on your shoot, but your DP is probably doing it, or at least the shot you're getting with that quote unquote lesser quality camera is still in the spirit and tone of the visual language of your film.
And lighting and all of that stuff. Yeah.
All that stuff. But then all of a sudden you've got like a 1080p or even just a beautiful crisp 4K shot of a bear in the woods, but just somehow well, that's the question. Sure. I know it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. That's important to me, especially in the editing room or even on set. But then I asked myself in hindsight, if I had kept those shots in there, would the audience have known? Would they have really known? I'm not sure if they would have, to be honest. So,
Andrew, you just do it with sound effects. The bear growling.
That is what we ended up doing a lot of the time.
And then just cartoon eyes, just like
in the dark.
Before we wrap up,
hear that? Yeah.
I do want to give Idan one more compliment, because regarding our shoot, the tourism shoot, we were basically taking a family from location to location in Ranson, Missouri. And I knew that a lot of our time would be spent just driving from location to location. We had these really cute kids, and I wanted to be able to capture them just naturally, like getting out of the car and seeing the next place. Like, whoa, this place is cool. And Idan knew that I was like going nuts with my iPhone, and also that it was really important for me to be opportunistic and to be able to capture these things, like if they're just happening. And so I don't know if you remember, Idan, but I think we chose the camera because we had these discussions, and it was a red Komodo, and we had the bigger studio setup like on the Movi and the Segway and all that stuff for some really nice shots. But you also, every time we drove, you're like, hey, I'm going to rebuild the camera to this tiny mode where it's just the Komodo.
I think actually we had a second one.
Oh,
if I remember correctly. I think we went Komodo so that I could get two of them instead of one body. And so one was always ready for the gimbal, and the other one was like the
hand
running gun.
Yeah. So it just had that super speed, and you're like, here's the exposure, here's the focus. And I just, and here's how to, start and stop recording. And it's all set for you. And so when we'd go in the car and there was just me and the family driving the car, I would be able to shoot. And a lot of those shots made it in, and they are, we're shooting inside a car, outside. So you got exposure issues and things. And on the iPhone, for sure, I don't think I would have been able to hold the outside of the car and the inside in the way that the Komodo did. And so we have some really great shots of the kids just like running that I just shot, handheld on the Komodo. And it was because Idan was like, okay, I get it. You want to have that portability. Let me at least give you a tool to get the camera quality. So yeah, I think obviously that stuff, the more you communicate to your cinematographer, the better.
Yeah, like how you want to work or what are you looking to accomplish? And when we can enable you to do that in the best way possible.
There is one shot. We had this awesome gimbal shot of this roller coaster that goes like upside down,
Yeah.
the loop on the gimbal. It's beautiful Zeiss lens and everything. And then I just did one shot on my iPhone where I just rotated my entire phone with the direction of the roller coaster, and the editor used that one. And I was like, "What's wrong with you? Why didn't you use like the red shot? It's so much more beautiful." And she's like,
dynamic.
She's like, "I just loved how it rotates with the." Which like you couldn't even maybe do in post, but yeah, the thing about the iPhone is, or any camera that size, is you can just like put it in these places and move it in this way that you just can't do with any cinema camera.
It's definitely like a delicate balance. Like Matt, I went to Boston University, and I was the last class in my grad program to be required to shoot on film. So I remember very distinctly the shift. I mean, it got like a fleet of 5Ds, and also Netflix was, ours was just coming out, like a streaming show by David Fincher. Oh my God. And there was this paradigm shift happening. And, I'm actually very thankful for the fact that I got to shoot on 16 millimeter and 8 millimeter and all those formats, because I still bring that with me today. I'm able, even though like Idan speaks at this level that's like so knowledgeable about like the photochemical process and all this stuff, I have shot with it, I have developed it, I have threaded into a camera. I understand the TLC that comes with like protecting the image, and I get why he's so passionate about it, because I am too. And I'm really glad that I learned the discipline of shooting on film, because I like to think that I carry that over to the film set and even shooting on digital. It's time is a commodity in the end. It's not just money, it's time. So you can't just like press record and keep running. You have to like pair, like what's our shot and how long is the take going to be and everything. So I wish more film students would have that option nowadays.
Matt, you do long takes, right? You do series and yeah.
I need to cut more often. I've had
those are super useful.
They are useful.
Yeah.
There's a sloppiness to them that you weren't alluding to, but perhaps I should cut and then re-roll. But also, honestly, the truth is there's a little bit of like, I'll call still rolling just so like no one will go in and futz with a mic or the makeup, all that stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm just burning hard drive space, which isn't free.
I mean, there's a scene in this movie where the kid eats a real fish, like a raw fish. And that's a sick scene where when he did that, he's a vegan, this actor. And he's seriously a 12-year-old vegan. He still is like 15 now. He almost supposed to be 16. And
not really. Cut that joke.
And I ran that take for 5-6 minutes and just let it sort of work.
Yeah.
Was it longer than he said?
I'm pretty sure you came and you said something along the lines of, we should change cards before this one because I'm going to run it for a long time. And we did. We ran almost an entire card on that.
It was great.
We also ran an entire card on you dropping a feather through frame. I remember that.
Yes.
That was terrible.
Which didn't make the movie.
Can I ask Andrew just one more question?
Yeah, we've got a little more on this roll.
Like what? So you finished this movie. It was in theaters. It's your third feature film. What's next? What does this lead to? Stallone calling you for Creed 7?
Creed 7. That'd be fun. No, I don't think I'm destined for those. And that's not my jam per se, but I love watching them. I am actively developing my next movie. I'm reading for a couple. The nice thing about making a movie with a multi-million-dollar budget is it shows certain people that they can trust you with money. Because in the end, like, what's the difference between this and 20 million? It's just numbers at that point.
$10 million.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. He's right. And I'm fielding those types of offers. I've also written like a horror film, so I'm thinking of doing a very hard pivot from this, just because I'm interested in different genres. And I'm also just getting more into the commercial space as well to keep sort of doing reps, as I like to say. Yeah, so I'm still figuring out what the next thing is, but I know what's been nice about this movie is it's given me the confidence to go to the next one. I've learned so much on this one. And now it's going to allow me to kind of go in the next movie and just be just a maniacal bastard the whole time.
That's the dream.
That's it.
I'm kidding. I'm a sweetheart.
How are you trying to get into the commercial space?
I'm going about the commercial space in a really strange way. I'm still doing the thing where I'm trying to meet companies and get on a roster and all that, but I'm a little late to the game on it. But I've done some weird random projects for some pretty major camera companies. Like I just shot a special film for Sony on the Sony Venice 2, which I did with Oren Sofer, and then a good friend of both Idan's and I's. And then I'm doing a project for another company I can't talk about yet. That is also kind of a showcase for something. So I'm getting to it in a weird way, but hopefully it's fruitful.
And how are you getting those jobs?
Oh, I get why you're asking the question. Networking, meeting people, being nice. I mean, when I say networking, it was through Oren Sofer. And through cultivating a relationship with somebody, and we wanted to work together. And he said, "Hey, I've got this thing. I want to do it." And he knew I'd show up and do the job and not embarrass him, and also, do something that was of quality. So, and we hope that we can continue to not embarrass our friends when they bring us onto stuff.
God, I love it when a DP gets a director a job. That's like my dream. Yeah. I have a DP that's been teasing me about these potential jobs coming up. And I'm like, this
really?
must be what it feels like.
Man, that's a lot for us to. Now we gotta be agents too.
Sure.
Well, I mean, you guys are hired by directors a lot,
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Idan, you got any? I mean, you're shooting a ton of awesome stuff all the time. Anything we should watch out for?
I just filmed a movie. We technically have 2 days to pick up because we were in New Orleans and the blizzard kind of shut us down. The whole production was indoors until the final 2 days, and that's when the blizzard came. And so we couldn't quite shoot our night exterior hurricane scene in the snow. So we're coming back to that in just like a week. But it's just picking up 2 days, finishing that movie. And
does it have a name?
Talk about? Yeah, I think I can talk about it. I mean, I can tell you the name. It's 6 till midnight.
Oh,
I think it's on IMDb already. Like they have a page for it potentially, but there'll be an announcement about it soon. A Screen Life horror movie.
It's a prequel to the Charles Bronson classic 10 to Midnight.
And not quite.
Some deep cuts there, Andrew.
Well, cool. And then in terms of social media,
I am Andrew.vhs at Instagram. So just Andrew, it's the easiest thing you could do to find me.
cool.
And I'm just Idan Menin on Instagram.
Menin.
Yes, Menin, Idan. Yeah.
Where can people check out the movie?
Almost everywhere. Amazon, Apple, YouTube.
It's on my shelf.
It's on your shelf. It's back there.
But the places where people see movies is what you're saying.
Exactly. Everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Absolutely everywhere.
Annoying question, but is there a free way to watch it?
Oh, there is a weird place where you can stream it for free. It's on the Angel Studios app.
Oh, is that who financed it?
No. We just made a weird, because it's not a religious film, but because the movie's inspirational and family friendly, we made a deal with them for like an exclusive window so we could use some of their marketing prowess. So the movie's on that. It's been doing really well on that app. And if you have that subscription, which a lot of people do, it's on that.
Awesome, guys. Well, do you have a few more minutes to hang out and endorse with us?
Unpaid endorsements.
For my unpaid endorsement, I'm going to go with something really broad, you guys, but I stand by it. Go to the nicest movie theater in your town. Now, we live in Los Angeles, so there's lots of really wonderful movie theaters. Over the weekend, the Academy Museum was doing free family screenings because of the fires. They wanted to do something for the community. And I've taken my daughter, who's 3, a handful of times, and they have 2 different screens. The smaller screen, which is essentially brand new and totally beautiful, and like the sound is incredible. And they kind of like the family screenings, they turn the lights up a little bit and the sound down a little bit, so it's not quite so loud and not quite so scary for younger kids, and it's great. That's kind of what I assumed was going to be the case for this last weekend, but it turns out it was in the big screen as well instead. And it was just literally, my wife started crying before the movie started rolling.
Wait, so is that the nicest theater in LA? I've never been.
It's so beautiful. It's gorgeous in there. A huge screen.
Like next to LACMA and the La Brea Tar Pits, and it's the big round ball, basically. It's like essentially a dome that's stadium style. It was really just like a nice reminder of how fucking awesome it is to go to the movies, you guys. Life is too short to it's great.
I love it.
So
I need to go back.
I think making a to-do of it is a really great idea. I think I always recommend people, you're going to go out to the movies, like you can plus it up by just like dressing up as if you're going to a
100%.
fancy dinner, and suddenly it feels like you're going to a Broadway show.
I went to the movies yesterday. I got these as a gift, these tickets to Regal Cinemas that were bought at Costco, like a Costco movie pack. They were literally bought 15 years ago and given to me, and my wife just found them in a drawer.
Did they work?
They worked. Regal Cinemas.
Incredible.
You guys know the premise of Dogman?
I want to see that so badly.
A dog and a police officer explode in a bomb explosion. And the police officer's head is just totally bandaged up. It's of no use. The dog's body is totally smashed to smithereens. So some nurse is like, why don't we sew the dog's head onto the police officer's body?
I can't wait.
And that's Dogman. Awesome. Pete Davidson is like the lead of that movie, but he actually plays the bad guy because Dogman has a dog brain and he doesn't talk, just howls.
I read that the director of that movie is the one who voices the dog in the movie, which is kind of fun.
Awesome. I love that.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
But the Regal Cinemas at LA Live is not the nicest theater in LA. And every time my son tried to lean back, the whole chair would squish him, would fold him up.
That's great.
What you got, buddy?
I'm watching this show that I won't say too much about, but it's on Hulu and it's called Paradise. And it stars Sterling K. Brown, and who's one of our great unsung actors. I mean, he's not unsung, he's just not me, but he's an amazing actor. And Dan Fogelman's the creator who did like This Is Us and all these great shows.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot of pedigree behind it. And it's marketed, this is all I'm going to say, it's marketed as a Secret Service agent and his relationship with the president who may or not have been killed, and he might have been framed for the murder. That's what the marketing tells you. But it is a wild swing, and it is a crazy show. And so far, I'm super engaged, so I can't recommend that enough. It kind of reminds me of Lost in a way, and it's a lot of fun. So if you're looking for something new and fresh to watch and want good actors, well, watch Paradise.
Yeah.
On Hulu.
I'll take you up on it. Yeah, I've seen the advertising for that.
Yeah,
it is not what you think it is, and look up nothing.
Okay, Don, what do you got?
I've been researching for like a personal project of mine, like a photo series, liquid emulsion, and how to like print images onto like unconventional surfaces, whether it's like wood blocks, concrete, whatever you can find.
That's how they do tintypes, right?
It's more or less the same concept, but liquid emulsion is literally like the silver nitrate that's on a film plane, and you have to like heat it up. It's like almost like Play-Doh, and you have to get it to the right temperature. It's such a intense process, but I don't know. I enjoy the sheer amount of work it takes just to get one photo printed. I think it was a 4-day process to get our test print done because we had to like make cement and prep it. And
so you're literally photographing onto cement.
No, you photograph onto film, or you could use a digital image technically, and you use an enlarger to project the image onto whatever surface you've prepped with the liquid emulsion. So it's part of a photo series that I'm developing.
Incredible.
Elon Musk just called and he said it's not efficient enough. We got to fire your whole crew. Sorry.
Yeah, it takes way too long, so I'm gonna get cut from the budget.
Wow, that's cool.
That's cool, man.
That's incredible.
Keep us posted on how they turn out too. That's rad. It's really cool.
Yeah. We did our first like actual successful print, and it looks cool. And we just like a lot we're learning. We have to figure out how to make it adhere to things better because it bubbles a little bit, and it's cool.
Well, I just recommended a show on Hulu.
You feel like a wizard too.
Yeah. No, don't worry. Mine is worse than you, Andrew. You know Tony Zhu, Every Frame of Painting. He retired like 3 years ago. He put out a couple videos.
He's unretired.
I don't think it cracks my top 5 Tony Zhu videos, but the title is so good, and it's something that I care about a lot. And it's called Where Do You Put the Camera? And it's just about how filmmakers decide where to put the camera. It's a 7-minute video on Every Frame of Painting. So you should check it out. What's weird is like, it's kind of anchored by an interview of Timothée Chalamet asking Martin Scorsese about how he decides where to put the camera, which is pretty cool conversation. Turns out, just put it in the simplest place possible.
Yeah. Isn't that right? That tends to be the case. Same with lighting. Like where should light tends to be the same thing. It's like where's the most simple spot?
And then you shake it.
Yeah.
Well, if you, our dear listeners, have anything you want to endorse or tell us about or talk to us about, or just tell us that you want to just shoot it hat or something, you can email us at justshootitpod@gmail.com. You can find us on, is there any social media left? I don't know. Instagram, we're at justshootitpod.
You forgot. We are now on TikTok. Just shoot a
or on TikTok as of today.
As of today.
What about Red
We're
Note?
not on Red Note or Blue Sky.
But we are on YouTube, and I'm on Instagram. I'm at Kaplan.
And I'm at Mr. Matt Unlow across all social media, including Letterboxd. This episode was edited by Kevin O. Yang. Thanks, Kevin. And produced by Tyler Small. And you're listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist, Jazar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.